Welcome everyone, it's Gray Shirt Guy. Not rocking the gray shirt today, I got a little black shirt on, but you know black's a shade of gray. It's all about the spectrum. Anyways, we're talking about terrain today. We're talking about Warhammer 40k terrain, Age of Sigmar. Mostly it's all Citadel terrain, but I've done a little bit of changes to it. But yeah, we're talking about terrain because I finished painting the Mordian Iron Guard army probably about 3-4 weeks ago, and was all set to do a World Eaters versus Mordian Guard stop motion battle report. I set all my terrain up that I had, and there was just things I didn't like about it. And the first two stop motion videos, the first one being like the kind of the first test I ever did, the second one being a very successful video as far as like what I was trying to achieve. And for the third video, I wanted to make it a little bit nicer. And I have all this terrain that wasn't painted and wasn't assembled. And I still do have more terrain. But what I showed you in that initial clip is what I've been working on for the past about 2, 3, almost 4 weeks. And a lot of it was relatively quick and easy, but some of it would take quite a while. So yeah, so let's pan the camera over. Let's show you what I'm working on. We'll go in depth and we'll discuss the different things I'm working on, and then we'll talk about what's actually on the table right now and where we're going to be moving forward. So. Okay, so let's just take a little bit of overview. I mean, you saw it in the intro, but let's kind of do a little panning shot. So over here we got a lot of craters and so a lot of GW random terrain. We have a shadow sword and some tanks, so just kind of for thematic effect. And then over here we have a foresty tree area, and we have an Aegis defense line. So let's kind of like let's get a little bit deeper into let's talk a little bit more about it. So I've had these Games Workshop craters for probably since 2015. No, never mind. No, let's take that back. I've had these craters probably since like 2010. I went into a random game store and they had them, and they're very thin plastic. They had them in a bag, a little Games Workshop bag before Games Workshop sold everything, mostly in boxes. But they had them in little bags, and so they were super thin. And I used them I believe in the first two stop motions. I definitely know I used them in the second one. And the problem I noticed is that when the predators were moving over top of them, they moved. And I did not like the fact that they moved. These are magnet-sized. But I didn't like the fact they were very flimsy. They're not filled. They're not heavy. And so I had two options. And so what I chose, well, I had 3 options. One was to base them. Well, 2, basically. So one was to base them and one was to fill them. Now, you can base them different ways, which is kind of where we get into the differentiation. I could have went with like a curved, more round base. Or I could have went where I did my initial idea was to just do the base where it traced the outline. But these are kind of very intricate shapes, and I wasn't so much in a hurry, but I didn't want to spend so much time on just craters, because at the end of the day, they're just area terrain. You're going to put some models in them. You're going to get light cover, not really obscuring anything, and some difficult terrain. So it'll be an issue for like some vehicles to pass over, and walkers and stuff. But I ended up going with the square bases because, one, I wanted a nice solid platform to where these wouldn't flex as much. And so I was like, oh, square base, it will extend the area terrain out a little bit. It does look a little weird because they're square, but I think overall it'll be fine. And one of the reasons why I think it'll be fine is because this Games Workshop Battlescape right here. So this is the original Battlescape from, I don't remember when they came out with this, but I do know it has been out it had been out for quite a while. And I haven't, I don't think I've seen it for sale outside of like eBay or somewhere. But I had it primed up. I've had it for probably almost as long as, well, I think I got this after I got these, but there was a period of time when I just got a bunch of random Games Workshop terrain because I thought that looked cool. But it was just been sitting primed on my table or just sitting like on a shelf. And I didn't want to use it because it was just primed, and I wanted to actually paint it up. So this took probably about a week of like after work and so on, and like on the weekend. And yeah, so we primed it up. I did Mantis Warriors for the vehicles, and for the Marines, that little helmets and stuff. And then just regular normal green for the Cadians. The trees are magnetized, so they've been magnetized for a long time, so these magnets are not super strong anymore, but they're strong enough. And And then the little white tufts are some gamer grass white flowers. And so I think it looks really good. A lot of people really liked it. One thing I've been doing lately is I have an Instagram, and so I don't really push the Instagram very often, but it is one of the few places where I post pictures and reels of my products first. So if you want to see what I'm doing like before I make a YouTube video, or some things that I might not ever post on YouTube, they're on my Instagram, so I should be able to put a link down below. Yeah, so we did the battlescape, and I magnetized these, so like if a vehicle's moving over top, I could just move the tree out of the way. So that'll be fine. And we got the craters, so we have 5 craters of different sizes, so those are cool. We did some static grass. This is old GW static grass I had. I'm not sure the length, I think maybe 2 millimeters. We got a bunch of different flocking, or not flocking, we got a bunch of different grass tufts from gamer grass, and also flowers. I didn't use a static applicator for this grass. I thought about looking at it, and so I just tried it. I just gave it a try. I just put PVA glue down, I put the static grass down, and I took a balloon and I rubbed it against my head. Like I inflated the balloon, obviously. I rubbed it against my hair, and I just kind of waved it over top of the grass, and it did help the grass stick up a little bit. But I actually kind of wanted the grass to be not super like in the way, because this is a terrain feature and models are going to be moving over top of it. So yeah, that's kind of what we did with the grass, and I kind of just sparsely laid it all around, and I think it looks all right. So kind of moving on. So we got this damaged Aquila. If you've been a viewer of the channel for a long time, I had this back when I was in Germany. I think that's probably where I picked it up. But this was like one of the first few terrain pieces I ever painted with that technical paint, the oxide technical paint. So I think it still looks pretty good. There's probably some different weathering I could have done with the rocks and stuff, but as is, I'm just going to leave it as is. I think it looks pretty good. And then this little guy right here, I think this is just, what is this? It's a gray, but I think it's a like Mechanicus standard gray, a brass, and then an Agrax Earthshade wash. Like I think this is like super basic. I could make it nicer, but just kind of like it as it is. Like I could probably definitely spruce up the little flowery type symbol, like the little, not clove or whatever you would call that, but I could probably definitely make it look nicer. But you know what? It's supposed to be a ruin, so I think I'm just gonna leave it as is. Put that back there. All right, let's kind of move the camera over just a smidge. Cover this area over here. So what we got right here, though, this is really awesome. I don't know what they call this anymore, but I think rules-wise you can count it as a statue. But it's like just a big Space Marine statue. And I think this was probably one of my quickest paint jobs ever, because it was mostly just what used to be called tin bits, but I think it's just called I forget the name of this, but it's one of the darker bases of the brass. It's like one of the base brass colors. And then I just put that oxide paint all over it, and from a distance it looks pretty good. A little statue action going on there. This Aegis defense line, I've had this Aegis defense line for probably 7-8 years now, maybe more. And I picked it up when they did when I first started. The sad part is I picked this up around the same time I picked my Cadians up, and my Cadians are still not painted, which is weird because I have a full Morgan Iron Guard army painted, but not my Cadians. They are on the list. The Cadians are going to get painted. So the next painted models are going to be Sisters of Battle and Death Guard. I'm going to do a side-by-side where I'm going to paint one squad of Sisters and then one squad of Death Guard. So those are going to get painted next. They'll be the next army I paint. After that, Space Wolves. After that, Cadians. And that's the order in which I'm going to be doing my paint job. Now, I might sneak in a couple World Eaters in there just because we're getting the new World Eater Codex. Well, so the new Codex is coming out probably winter or next year, but the White Dwarf Supplement is coming out, as far as I understand, next month, so that'd be pretty cool. But this Aegis defense line, it's been really old, and I never really knew what I wanted to paint it. And one problem is one of the sections was not primed, so I was just like, oh, I gotta go prime that section. But I had primed them white, and I hate priming in white now. But all I did with this is I just gave it a basic. I think I just used one of my leftover airbrush paints that I wasn't planning on using for anything other projects. So I picked a light gray, and I gave it an overall wash, and I picked out a few details, and then I have some oil. So I have some enamel washes to make the rust effect on the bolts, and I have an oil wash that's called like a moss oil, and it's like supposed to simulate moss, but to me it just looks green. Like it doesn't really give. There is. I've recently seen there's a paint that I do want to get a hold of that once it dries, it has a medium in it that looks like moss. I think that'd be pretty cool. But for this, it's done. I'm not going to do anything else to it. It's an Aegis defense line. It's a piece of terrain. It's painted. It meets my requirements for a good paint job. It looks way better than it did when it was just primed white. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then so now we're going to go over to what has taken me almost 3 weeks. I was just over 2 weeks worth of work for these 6 Games Workshop trees. So let me grab a box real quick. So these 6 trees, let me back out on the zoom in. These 6 trees came in this box right here. Let me put it right there. So sorry for the light, but it came in the Soul. Oh, hold on, let me turn this light off real quick so we don't have a glare. Okay, so it came in the Soul Drained Forest set. So it's an Age of Sigmar Warcry set, and what it comes with. Whoop, I'm knocking over my staging. So what it comes with 6 trees, 6 of the Awakened Wildwood trees, and some scatter terrain that I haven't painted because it's very Age of Sigmar-y. I do have an Age of Sigmar army, but I don't know if I'm going to use that scatter terrain because it's not really good for barriers and it's not buildings or anything. So I more than likely for Age of Sigmar might go get like an old-timey MDF town set instead of using this kind of like ruined scatter terrain. But so I picked up 2 of these on Amazon because I had heard that they were going out of stock. And now if you know anything, the Awakened Wildwood set of 3 trees is like $50. And so in here, I think this was like $55 at the time. And I'm like, so for just a little bit over the price of 3 trees, I get 6 trees and some random scatter terrain. Plus, I get a bunch of other stuff in here. Now, it took so long to get those 6 trees painted and built and assembled. And it wasn't that it was a difficult task. It was just a lot of work. And the way I paint these kind of I did sub-assembling them, and I know that you can paint them relatively quickly if you do it a certain way. I sub-assembled all the leaf parts, and I painted them all separately. And I really went to town on the bases, and so that's why they did take me a long time. I was working on them after work for an hour or 2 every day, on the weekends, and yeah, so I did put quite a bit of effort into it. And honestly, I think they turned out really well. Like, I think the pink on the trees looks great. The green looks really good. And yeah, so let me put this little box away. I kind of want to let you know, what is your guys' feedback? And if you want to see some more close-up photos, like if they're not good in the video, just check out my Instagram, and they're going to look a lot nicer. So we have. Let me kind of set up here a little bit. Let me move the camera, turn that light back on. I gotta narrate what I'm doing so I know what I'm doing. Whew, all right. So basically the way these trees come is, if you've never assembled one, is they come with just the stalk and like you glue the stalk together, but they're all the branches connect in, and so when you do 6 trees, you get 48 branches. So when you split it in half, you get 24. So I had 24 branches so it's 8 times 3, 24. So I had 24 branches, and I wanted to, so what I had to do is I had to decide how I was going to do, what the order of operations was going to be. So what I did is I primed them black, did a white zenithal highlight with airbrush dead white from Vallejo Game Air. So I had a nice zenithal highlight, and then I went in with my airbrush and I used some Vallejo Model Air Squid Pink, and I did a nice base coat on the leaves. And so what I did is I base coated, so the bottoms were black primer, a little bit of toning things going on. The bottoms were black, so the tops were white. So I tried to be really light with the base coat on the tops, and I tried to be light with the base coats on the bottom to let the black let the natural shading kind of work its way. And then what I did after that is I left the underside, so then I did a wash, an overall wash of Caribou Crimson from GW. And on the bottom, that was it. Like, I didn't do anything else. Well, the bottom actually is not painted. But the bottom of the leaves, they're just straight the base coat and the wash. I didn't do anything else with them. So, but on the top, what I did is I took 2 other pinks. I'm trying to remember the names of the pinks. I know one of them's Emperor's Children. No, yeah, so one of them's Emperor's Children. And so I did an Emperor's Children, which is a layer paint from GW. I did an overall dry brush with it. And then after that, I did Changeling Pink, which is a dry brush paint, which is a dry paint from their dry series. And then I did a light dusting, which is where you get that slight white appearance. Now, there might be a slight off-coloring, I believe, on this one because I got a little bit of brown wash from the tree on it. Now, then for the tree trunk, I used a Vallejo Game Air Charred Brown. And then I did a Agrak Earthshade wash over it. And then on the base, I used a Steel Legion Drab for the sand. I kept the same color for the branches, for the brown, the charred brown. And then I put, for the stones, I forgot what gray this is, but I think it might be a Administratum gray. And I did a terracotta for the other rocks. Picked out the bones. I did the bone details with Xandri Dust. And then I did the mushrooms. I did the mushrooms in 3 colors on these. So I did a yellow, which is just Averland Sunset and a wash. The orange is I can't pronounce it. I think it's one of the only GW base orange colors. And then the red is just Mephiston Red with a red wash over top of it. And then the green is, I think, Strachan Green with a green wash over top. Now, the tree itself was just brown, and I took a light gray dry brush to the tree, to the trunk and the branches, and then I did a light Strachan Green dry brush over top of that. That really gives it a slightly different off color because, trees aren't necessarily straight brown. I wanted to throw some grays in there. And then I did a wash on all the bases. For this, I did sepia wash for the bones. For the rest of the base, I think I did a brown wash. I might have done a black wash on the rocks, but so once everything was all painted and washed, then I had to glue everything together. So everything is glued together with super glue. Now, because everything is painted and I didn't blue tack the tips where the connection points are, if the bonds of glue are strong in some places and they're not strong in others, so if I'm really manhandling it, the branches will pop off, which is fine because it'll take the undercoat and then I just re-super glue it back on, and that should be a much stronger bond. So that's how I did the pink. A lot of people really like the cherry blossom effect. I think it turned out really well. Let me know what you think. And so they're basically just area terrain. They're one of the more expensive GW kits I've received, but in the end of the day, I think they turned out all right, and I'm pretty happy with how they looked. I do have that other Soul Drain Forest set. And the plan is maybe a year or 2 years from now, I'm going to do those up, but more of like an autumn forest for all 6 trees. I'm going to tone out the autumn leaves with oranges and yellows and some early greens, but the leaves are going to be a pattern changing color kind of thing with the other 6 trees I do. Now for these, I actually did these entire 3 next trees all in one same day. What I did is I had 2 different greens. I went with a Vallejo Model Air or Game Air Sick green, and then I had a Vallejo Game Air dark green. And so for the trunk, I went with the dark green, and for the leaves, I went with the sick green. And I just gave them this is like a Beal Tan green. It's like the greenish blue wash. And then I just gave them a light Strachan Green dry brushing, kind of really wanted to keep the deep green in there. But then for the bait for the trunk, I used it's like Arthonian camo shade. It's like the other green that's not blue. And then I used the Screamer Pink and the pink colors for the mushrooms. For the moss, I actually wanted to go for more of a fungus than a moss, so that's why I went with this orange. And I threw some fluorescent orange in there to give it kind of a pop. To kind of give it like an alien feel, like there's some sort of alien moss that's not supposed to be growing on these trees. But for the bases, I kind of kept very similar colors to the pinks. I think I use a different brown But and then I only used gray on the rocks. But I think overall the green ones do look good. And when you put the green ones next to the pink ones, like we have here, let's just take a little example. I think the contrast between the forest there is just great. Like one, too much pink kind of throws it off. But when you got the pink and the green next to each other, I think it makes it a really nice looking forest. And so I can either have two forest pockets, or I can have one really large forest, and I can mix and match however I want to. And I think this affords me a lot of flexibility. Now, obviously, when I get the other 6 trees painted, maybe next year, it'll look even better, and I can probably do like a whole forest board, which would be pretty cool. But yeah, so that's what I've done so far. So let me turn the camera back over, and we'll discuss what I'm working on next. All right, so now that we've looked at the table and all the terrain I've been working on, the craters, the trees, the defense line, and so on and so forth. Also, with the Aegis defense line, I don't know if I'm ever going to use the barricade rules or what do they call those? The fortification rules. But at the bare minimum, I think it's going to look pretty good for like some scatter terrain. Like, oh, the city had a defensive line, and I might not have the quad gun there, or I might have it, but like it just be like, oh, the quad gun's not active. But there could be a thing where like it might be kind of like an objective. Like if you secure this objective, you get to use the quad gun. That'd be kind of cool. But you've probably seen these MDF buildings that I have on previous videos or on other, most likely previous videos. Now this is an ITC Gothic ruin, no, not ITC. It's a Frontline Gaming. I think it follows ITC rules, but I'm not sure. I know it's a Frontline Gaming product. Now I'm not sponsored, obviously, because I messed up the name. But I bought these probably last year. Yeah, I definitely know I bought them. That was like last spring when I got back from my trip overseas, and I assembled them. And I think my first video they're not painted. And then what I did is I took them outside. I rattle canned them with green or with black primer, and then I had a bunch of tans and a bunch of grays, and I just rattle canned them. The problem was it was around this time of year last year, so it was getting hot in the summer. It was really bright, and the paint didn't cure properly. And so in where I live, in the dry kind of climate I live in, black primer tends to work very well. It doesn't powder up very easily, and I don't ever have any problems with black. But every other color I've ever used, be it gray, whites, colored primers, it was really bad on my Talarn, so I was actually very upset with kind of how it powdered up. And when it gets really hot here, it's almost like you can't prime for like half of the year. And I'm not going to wait half a year to prime some models. I don't have kind of the system set up in my garage to do that kind of booth, but what does work is ultra flat matte black tends to work. I try to prime early morning, but I've never had a problem using the black. It doesn't powder up. It's probably some sort of pigment issue. But these do have some powdering on them. I've used them a little bit, and I didn't seal them. So, but I was like, you know what? I actually want to make this terrain look nicer. I want to kind of amp the terrain up. I want it to look just more than just, it looks fine when you have a whole table full of it, but I want to add a little bit more flair because I put some extra effort into my forest and my ruins and everything. So what I'm doing is I've already started on one of the first buildings, is I'm trying to pick a theme for what each building is, whether it be a house, like an apartment area, or whether it be a pet store or a grocery store or an office building, and I'm trying to theme out the buildings. Now, for the first building, what I did is I chose, and it's on the painting table, so I don't want to go get it, but I chose a light gray because I have a bunch of paints that I don't plan on using. I do have some craft paints, so I'm probably going to be using those a lot more, just because I think the craft paints will cover really well. But I was just going through it and just randomly, just spitballing some ideas. And I put light gray on the floor, and so I'm probably going to maybe keep a light gray kind of motif across all of the buildings so they all have very similar floors, because my idea is they're all kind of the same town, and so imperial cities are typically built like hablocks. They're all kind of built out of the same materials, but I might change it up a little bit. Maybe I'll put like a red carpet or something like that. But I got a lot of plastic card so I can make some ladders, because ladders might be cool, or some ladders inside. And then I got a bunch of different plastic card shapes so I can make like cans and I can make shelves, and I can make desks, and so I got a bunch of like random ideas. So I don't want to make these unusable. I don't want to fill them diorama style with too much stuff, but I just want to add a few accents here and there. So one of the ideas I saw from one of the YouTube videos was like, where all this cracking material is I'm going to drill little holes in it, and I'm going to put some wires, some pin, probably what do they call that? Some paper clip, and I'm going to bend it in to make it look like rebar. So probably what I'm going to have to do with these is I might have to just reprime them all in black, and then use my airbrush or my paintbrush to go over them. Now my concern is that I might put too many layers of paint on the MDF, just because they already have a couple layers of paint on them. I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal because these are laser cut, so this should be fine for detail wise. But I'm going to be working on the terrain. So yes, it will delay the stop motion video for a couple more weeks, and but we got our terrain. So hopefully by end of June we have a stop motion video on the channel. But once I get these buildings done, and I'm probably not going to do, well, I have a lot of buildings to do. Let me count. I got 1 on the table, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 buildings to paint. But I don't need 10 to do the next video. I probably need 6 or probably about 6. So I'm probably going to do about 5 or 6 of the buildings for the next video to kind of just fill out the board, because I don't want to use all of the terrain and everything, or I don't want to use all of the craters in the next video. I just had them and I wanted to paint a couple, so I'll probably use a couple craters. I want to use the forest, but I do want some trees. Kind of the idea is like the forest will be on one side of the board and the buildings will be kind of forming a village, and with maybe some of the scattered terrain in like a village center. And then we'll just do it. I'll have to roll off which side starts on which side, but I think it'll look pretty cool. So I want to get a couple of these buildings all built up. I have an idea. So one of them's already going to be a grocery store. I think one of them might be like a hospital or something. And so I'm trying different colors. So they're not going to be uniform in like the same color building that we have here. We're going to make them a little bit more unique. I'll have to find some way to maybe tie them together. I definitely also plan on trying to do some graffiti on the sides. I have a bunch of wires, so I might have some wires hanging from inside. So there's a lot of plans going forth with the MDF terrain. But yeah, that's the status update. It's the middle of May. March, yeah, May. Okay, thinking of my days. Middle of May, and yeah, so we're working on the buildings. We're gonna probably get about 5 or 6 of them done, and then we will have everything that I want to do the next stop motion video. After the stop motion video is done, we have some extra models I picked up. So I did finish my 22 armies, and I have them all sitting here. So they're all sitting in these display cabinets. They're all ready to get painted. Some of them are already painted. I have about, how many armies have I painted? I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I get 4 armies painted. Yeah, because I have, yeah, Chaos, Space Marines, 2 cards, yeah. So I thought I had a 5th army painted. Oh yes, I have a 5th. Never mind, I have 5. I have 3 Guardsmen armies painted. I've got Talarn, Mordians, and Catachans. And then I have World Eaters, and I have Blood Angels. So, but we have a bunch more armies to paint. So that's going to be after the terrain is done. We're going to be working on painting. I do have a lot of other plans going on for the this year and kind of moving forward. So that's going to be really exciting. So, trying to still, hobby as much as I can, paint as much as I can when I have time to paint. And but yeah, so I got some extra models, but not for new armies. These are to beef up the other armies. So my World Eaters, I really like my World Eaters. Also narratively, I like them. I wanted to beef them up another 1,000 points, so I picked up a Khorne Lord of Skulls. I picked up 2 Decimators from Forge World. They have the Reaper autocannon, and they have their close combat chain claw thing. I'm probably going to magnetize those so I could take 2 autocannons or 2 claws on one of them. That'd be kind of cool. Also magnetize them if I ever want to get like the Soul Flame they have a Soul Flame weapon. that does mortal wounds, but it damages the decimators, so it's like, and then I picked up a Helldrake because I think the Helldrake's cool. I think when we get a new... Now, there's a concern, though. My concern is that I still think I still think World Eaters will have access to the Decimator and definitely the Khorne Lord of Skulls. I don't see why they wouldn't have access to the Helldrake, so that's good. I did print... Let me grab one. Let's see. I did 3D print, and I'm pretty sure I showed these off in another video, but I did 3D print some really cool looking cultists. Some heretic guardsmen. I'm going to use them as cultists. And my concern is that World Eaters won't have access to cultists in the next release. I really hope not, because they're a good, nice fodder unit. And maybe they might have like a Khorne version of the cultist. But I know that because the Thousand Sons, they have the Zangors, so that's kind of like their cultisty unit. I think, I have to look, but I think the Thousand Sons could also take cultists. I don't have that rule book, so I'm not 100% sure. And I also don't have a Thousand Sons army. But I know that Death Guard, they have Poxwalkers, and so like, do Death Guard have cultists? I don't think they do. Do I have a Death Guard? I've got the Death Guard, I've got the Death Guard rulebook somewhere in my house, and I'll have to go look at that, but if you know, you know. But either way, so I'm just hoping that I can still use these for my World Eaters. I still plan on painting them up because they're super easy to print. Once again, not sponsored, but Red Makers, they got a good supported file, and I really like these. And worst case scenario, I might just print myself out a Heretic Guardsman army, just like 1,000 points or 2,000 points or something, because they came out with some cool looking heavy weapons, and I can always get some cool tanks and stuff. But I didn't necessarily get my 3D printer to print more Guardsman armies. Like I already have like 9. But I mean, you know, I'm not gonna say no to some cool looking guard. Plus they're very, very much Death Quarter Krieg kind of inspired. Speaking of Death Quarter Krieg and speaking of 3D printing, I do kind of have a desire to print a very large Rough Riders army. That the models are out there, they look really good. They're third party, so they're not like copy sculpts from GW. So I say whenever I'm picking a 3D model, I don't want to copy GW. I want to use something that somebody else came up with. And whether it's the same system or same size, I'll use them in Warhammer 40K, that's fine. But I kind of want to test these out. And I did pick up some one-page rules files for Beastmen, for their Beastmen line. And so those would probably be pretty fun when I print those, but I still have a whole bunch of Age of Sigmar to paint first. So I'm trying not to. Other things we got on the thing just before I go, we picked up 1,000 points more for Space Wolves because we have 2,000 points of Space Wolves. But I really like, I don't have a lot of Dreadnoughts. All I have for Dreadnoughts is one Redemptor Dreadnought for my Howling Griffins and one Dreadnought, which is a character Dreadnought for my Salamanders. And I was like, I need some more Dreadnoughts. So I just picked up 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts and 2 Space Wolf Dreadnoughts. One for Murderfang, one for the Bjorn, I think his name, and then 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts for Space Wolves. And so that came, and then plus Primaris Tech Priest, that came out to basically a 990-ish points or something like that. And so we have another 1,000 points for the Space Wolves, so a full 3,000 for the Space Wolves would be pretty cool. And then there's 2 more boxes, and so I made a custom Defiler a while ago for Nurgle. There's a video on my channel about it, I do believe. And the paint job is it's pink and brass, because that was what I was gonna do my Death Guard in, but I've changed my color scheme for Death Guard. I didn't want to get rid of the Defiler because I can actually use that Defiler in my other Chaos Space Marine armies, because I have one Chaos Space Marine army that doesn't have a coherent color scheme intentionally. Because that's more of a band of different armies getting together, so the color scheme is intentionally different. And it's not meant to be for like, I bring it to a tournament and confuse the shit out of everybody. It's meant for like a squad of 10 Chaos Space Marines. They all have different paint schemes because they're all come from different chapters and they're all survivors of different chapters. And so that Defiler being a weird color scheme that doesn't fit an existing army can go in that Chaos Space Marine army. So originally I was just going to kind of chuck it, but I was like, no, it can still serve a purpose, and it was a nice fun project, but that means the Death Guard army is missing a Defiler. And so what I did is I actually ordered the original Defiler kit, and I ordered a Chaos Space Marine Land Raider, because I don't like the crab walk kind of thing. but I'm going to put the Defiler, I'm going to have the Defiler growing out of the Chaos Land Raider, and it's going to look really cool. Where the las guns are on the side of the Land Raider, I'm going to have like the claws busting out from there, and from like the side of the, from like, basically the Defiler is growing from the inside of the Land Raider, like the Machine Spirit has just morphed and like went crazy. And I don't know how much weapon magnetization I'll be able to do and make it look right, but we'll figure it out. We'll see if we're going to magnetize it or not. Worst case scenario, it'll have the battle cannon, it'll have the auto cannon, and it'll have the heavy flamer weapons. Worst case scenario, because those, I think those are pretty good weapon options for the Defiler. To keep it affordable, but to still keep it kind of killy. Plus, it's got the nice little pinching claws. Yeah, that's what we got going on. That's what I've been working on, and hopefully the next video you see will be me showing off my finished buildings, and then shortly after that will be me doing a stop motion video of the Mordian Iron Guard either defending a building or defending a town or attacking a town full of World Eaters. And so we'll see how that plays out. And I don't know if the Mordian Iron Guard have enough oomph and killing potential. Sure, they got the Shadow Sword, but we'll see. We'll see if the World Eaters can weather that attack. They do have a lot more bodies, but they don't have a lot of anti-armor. So that could be an interesting play. Aside from that, if you want to support me, please check out my book. There's a link in the description below. It's a science fiction space opera, and then I got my Instagram. Hopefully I'll remember to put that on there. And aside from that, have a good one, and see you around. Goodbye.